Hello and welcome back to the Jane Z podcast. My name is Jayce
And I'm Zeth Makala.
and today I owe somebody an apology, or rather, something. Today we are talking about The Sound of Music. Not necessarily one of the. It's not necessarily the kind of movie that we normally discuss on this channel, but it's certainly one that I am glad that I revisited and gave another shot.
Why do
Um,
you why do you say that? Are you apologizing to me finally over this
no, I'm not
trash that I
apologizing to
made you?
you. Okay, to be fair, it was 3 hours. And to go back, I think everybody's seen this movie, heard about it, heard the songs, super popular. But I came to realize that I, in my life, never made it more than halfway through this movie. So I
Really?
always had the impression, and I'm not entirely wrong, that it is pretty much exclusively enjoyed by like grandmothers and hipster
No.
girls. That was my
No.
impression for years
No.
because all I ever got to hear was the silly singing. That's what all I knew of it. I didn't get to the later parts of the movie that were a lot more serious.
I can see that, but the singing is what makes it really enjoyable for me as well. This is one of the best musicals ever made with some of the great uh unforgettable tunes. I mean, you have 16 going on 17 in the beginning, The Sound of Music, do re mi fa sol la ti do.
They're fun. They're not exactly my cup of tea, but they are
Hmm.
fun, and I did enjoy watching them. So I I I think it almost was a bit of overabundance because mom would play those songs in the car. As a little kid, they'd have the CD with all the songs on it. So I got
Hmm.
to hear these songs. I was very well aware of what was in this movie, but so I did enjoy that to an extent. I liked being able to hear those songs again, seeing where they kind of came from because I have not seen this movie in a decade and I was so little I either don't remember, but more than likely I just never finished it because I was promised a half-hour intermission when I claimed the movie was 3 hours long. And Disney Plus, no, it's like 5 minutes, if that. So
Yeah, well, remember, this is back when movies were really, really long, like you have Gone with the Wind, and so they had that intermission where you would go and see the first half of the movie. You would There would be like a 10 to 15-minute break where you could go to the bathroom or get concessions. Then you would go back and watch the remainder of the movie.
yeah, yeah, and I kind of wish they did that now to an extent. Now you have to go into like that one. I'm not going to get into it, but there's some actually I do need it sometimes. They have these websites where they tell you exactly when the best time to go get popcorn is during the movie.
Hmm.
That's totally besides the point. They're kind of nice stuff if you ever need to use them, but um yeah, I thought that this movie I kind of now that I'm done with it understand why it's such a classic and why so many people hold it in such high regard. It's kind of two separate not two separate movies, but it changes drastically after the intermission, no doubt. And I was fine with it before, but I was thinking, where could this movie go after I've watched it for, about 2 hours? And I'm
Hmm.
like, how is there still an hour left? What is going to happen? She's gonna, I mean, there's not that much conflict. It wasn't that intense. So it took a really neat turn. I heard this is based off a true story.
It is, in fact. There is multiple movies about this, I believe, but this is the definitive version of it. There was one before this called The Nun, but yeah, I did a little research once I watched this movie recently, and it's based off the memoirs of I always forget her name, but Julie Andrews' character in this movie. It's based off
Hmm.
of her memoirs, and she went and wrote down in a book all about what happened, and it's all true about the Nazis, the children, her being a nun, her coming to be a um, I forget the word they used all the time. Not a nanny,
No, she
but
was a nun.
a
Oh,
governess.
a governess. Yes, it's super fascinating, and it kind of, I mean, obviously it's based off real life, but it kind of shows that while they seem somewhat disconnected, like they're two entirely in different parts of their lives,
Mhm.
it shows how quickly, you spent 2 hours watching them, do all this family stuff. It's all lighthearted. It's all for fun. The good characters, good conversations. But the part that stood out to me the most was just how quickly things changed when the Nazis invaded Austria
Mhm.
and or not. I don't know if they invaded
Europe.
or
They're in
just
Europe
Europe.
somewhere.
Yeah, but he was required to join, and just it kind of threw me for a loop that he's a wealthy man. He's a navy captain, and the fact that you could kind of see it throughout the movie building up. I didn't think much of it. I kind of was a little taken aback because I didn't quite realize the context. But
I forget you kind of forget about the Nazis during this film. I mean, it's mentioned very briefly in the first part of the movie. You have it where their oldest daughter is in love with this telegram deliverer boy. They sing songs together, etc. And one day he's throwing rocks up at her window to get her attention, and he panics once the father yells at him, what are you doing? And he panics and he salutes Hitler and he
yeah,
runs off. And that's sort of played for laughs, and it's never really brought up again throughout the first part of the movie. Till
yeah,
the second part of the movie, once this party starts, there's this big party. I believe it's in the second part. But
that's the end of the first part. Is the big
okay,
party?
so at the end of the first part is when they start to pick up on the Nazis a little more, the storyline of the Nazis. And you have it where there's like important people in the party that are criticizing for him waving the European flags.
He had the Austrian flag.
Austrian
It
flag.
was it
I'm
was
so
hanging
sorry.
in it,
Yeah. But yeah, it's
and
very sprinkled throughout, but then it hits really hard in the second one.
it really does. It came up kind of quickly. I didn't realize that's where they were going to take it. So, because like I said, I haven't seen the second part. I didn't know that that's where they were going to go with this story. So it really did catch me off guard, and I think that's a good thing when it's just showing how quickly it came about and how serious things got very quickly. And I feel like that's why this movie, honestly, I feel like people might need to give it a second look if they're kind of like
Hmm.
me and they just kind of remember it for the silly songs. It's really a just a it was a lot more of a serious description of the events than I initially anticipated.
Yeah, and it's not serious as in terms of like graphic. They don't get into anything with the Holocaust or anything to do with uh, just graphic details when it comes to the Nazis and World War II in general. This is more about the scariness of what was happening in Austria.
Even in that country, they weren't
Yeah,
Jews, they weren't anything else. He
this is
was
just the
just he just didn't
scariness.
agree.
Yeah, this is just like the scariness of if your country was being invaded by an unknown force.
Yeah, and and so he was put in such a kind of dark situation where this
Hmm.
whole movie they have this big place. He's a wealthy man, and all of a sudden it doesn't really matter that much. There was nothing they could do to get out of that situation, and they did. It's kind of in a I know it's based off real life, but it's more of a movie style way. But
Yeah, I really love the scene. You think they're gonna get away in their car, like they've got all the kids buried in coats. They push the car out, and
yeah,
right when they're all jumping in, the headlights come on, and it's his one former friend who became a captain, I believe, and then
yeah.
like two Nazi officers behind him, and that's pretty scary. Like it's not because it's not necessarily a scary scene, but it's scary because this
You
really
weren't
happened
expecting
in
it.
real life. On top of, yeah, the non expecting on not expecting it to happen like that.
So I kind of begin to question how much of it's real life when it comes to like the after that, like the talent show.
Yeah, I didn't
They let him perform. I'm not so. It could very well be. I find it hard to believe.
yeah, I don't know. I just know it's based off of a memoirs. So, I think that's something we would have to do more research on. I didn't read it or anything, but I just know that there was a former movie before this, and there was her memoirs that this is based off of.
Hmm.
And this is kind of, you know, when we watch this nowadays, it's been over what, 120 years, 100 years since
It's
World
been about
War.
a little less than 100 years.
Yeah, I mean that's not a short amount of time, but it's still, for people like you and me, we still have no idea really the fear factor when it came to, the time of the events of this movie. But what's
No.
interesting about this film is it came out in 1965 and World War II ended in 1945. So that's
So
only
yeah,
a
it
good
had some time
20
to marinate
years.
there.
But that's only a good 20 years. I mean, think about 9/11 when it comes to us. That's only been about 20 years. So that
Yeah, at the
the
same
events
time they made movies and stuff off of it.
but I'm
Pretty
saying but I'm saying this movie, it became one of the highest grossing at the time, or I think
mm,
it was the highest grossing, and it resonated with a lot of people. And that's one reason it would have at the time, is because those events were so close. It's like anytime a movie about 9/11 happens and maybe they don't get details right, or maybe they do get details right, that can affect people, whether for good or for bad.
overall, I just think that between the really likable characters, there's the whole beginning of it even without the whole Nazi stuff. It's very charismatic. It's
Mhm.
got good songs in it. It's got fun characters, and it kind of is a really good example of what a good movie was like at that time, and kind of how they played certain characters.
Oh, it was
And
extremely good. I always enjoy the songs just because with musicals, you have to have it where this is a 3-hour film, so there can be a lot of room for character building. But with musicals, your character building is always through the song. That's why a lot of Disney princesses, their character is built through their song that they sing.
yeah,
And this movie, you constantly see that, whether it be through the children, the Julia Andrews character building a relationship with the children, or the Navy captain. Um, that's one thing
yeah,
I really appreciate about this movie is it nails that. Every single song is here for a reason.
yeah. Overall, they did just a phenomenal job on the soundtrack. The song, if you actually listen to the lyrics of the song, they're kind of silly, but that's totally just fine. It's
Yeah,
more
songs are
about
meant to be silly.
it's fun because it's supposed yeah, you're right, because these kids were growing up in a super strict environment. And she was showing them how to be silly and how to have some fun, and she did that with the songs, and it's just super sweet.
Do
I
you
just
do you have
really
any favorite
enjoyed this
songs?
movie. I really like the song that she sings.
She has a very
Mm,
beautiful voice, that's for sure.
she does. It's probably not my like favorite sounding one. It's still good, but I just like the Do Re Mi song. I mean, that one, I just remember that one the most from when I was a kid, listen to it in the car. I just, it helped me, it's just a teaching song almost for them and for little me. So I have a good connection with that song. I think it's really fun. And do you have a favorite song?
Let me look it up. It's been about a week.
I must say, the one thing I noticed is they did, and for good reason, but I always wondered, like, I only ever hear a select few songs from this movie, but they're singing a lot. But I kind of realized that they do sing the same songs a couple times each, almost for
Yeah,
good
but
reason.
and that's a cool thing about this the soundtrack of this is because you have the do re mi fa sol la ti do song, but then they keep using that like a little bit later
You're
on after
right.
they keep using that same melody, but they change the lyrics, and it's so cool that they do that.
They do. They'll play it like, if it's more somber, they'll play it in a different style, or like in the
Mhm.
in the ball, they'll play the orchestra. They'll play it like triumphantly, or they'll do all sorts of cool stuff.
Yeah, if I had to uh choose one song though that I love throughout this whole movie, it's the Maria song that the nuns sing in the beginning, uh, when she's running in late and she looks at him and she's just like looks up to heaven and she's just like, "Ah, whatever." Just keeps on running and then, uh,
Mhm.
that song that they sing and also when she gets married to the captain, and then
Mm.
the soundtrack is really swelling and it's big, bombastic, and then all the nuns in the background are singing it again. That just gets the dumbest smile on my face all the time. I love it to death.
It's really fun. I was genuinely surprised with, being a teenage boy that's not I to an extent, you kind of come to expect certain things out of certain movies. But I'm glad this one had more to it than just silly songs like I thought it would. I I found myself getting into it when I really didn't think I would.
Yeah, this movie definitely has an effect on people. You just can't help but smile throughout the movie.
Yeah, I genuinely had fun, and I genuinely felt something when it changed up later. I ended up thinking they're gonna drag it out to probably one of my more not favorite, but it's like I recognize just how well written it was and how they portrayed the events. So I ended up
Mhm.
enjoying that as well when I thought there was nothing else for it to give.
Yeah. The only thing I will say that I mean, it's played more for the movie, and I don't know if this is how it happened in real life, but when Maria comes, it's very quick, the love story that kind of flows between her and the captain. It's
Hmm.
natural, it feels very natural. You know, they have a dance and they look into each other's eyes more than once, and it builds off of that. But I just feel bad for the lady that was his girlfriend at the time.
Yeah, that was weird. Like, I mean, I would have done the same thing if I was her, but at the same time, I don't know. That part was a little bit. That part could have been a little. That part was a little weird. That's all I'm gonna say. It was just a
Yeah,
little different than
it was fine. Like I said, there's plenty of moments to build their relationship. It's not like they meet eye contact and they start loving one another. They hate each other at first.
they do. I was a little surprised, actually, in that regard, just how quickly the father turned around and was
Mhm.
like,
That's the only thing I
That
can
was the
say.
only thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maria's love for the captain builds naturally, but the captain's love for
it
Maria
was okay.
yeah.
It was nothing special on that front.
Yeah, but it does like, their
It
chemistry
does
does
the
feel
job.
natural.
Yeah, it feels fine. I didn't feel like it was out of the blue. It just wasn't the most natural it could be.
Yeah.
But they had to put in time for other stuff I now know, so I'm gonna give that a more of a pass.
Yeah, that's completely fine, but that's, like, my only little thing that I could possibly nitpick about it.
Hmm.
Is there anything else that you liked about it or anything else you wanna say?
I think that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on this one.
Okay.
Overall, a lot better than I thought it would be. Actually, enjoyed this movie quite a bit.
Well, I'm
And if you
glad.
haven't seen it in a while, me and every other person over the age of 65 gives it a hearty recommendation if you haven't seen it in a bit.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to seeing some of these more classic movies with you. I was thinking we could do a lot more, just movies that people might not talk about as much, like Sound of Music. A lot of people know the movie,
It's
but
known, but it's not it's been
it's
a
not
minute since
talked
it's been
about it.
out, and yeah.
It's not talked about. I thought we could do, like, older ones like Mary Poppins. That's a really good one that no one talks about as much. We could do, like, ones maybe we've never seen before that are considered some of the best movies of all time, like Citizen Kane. I've never seen Citizen Kane, and we
Yeah,
could we could just see
I don't
what's
know
the
anything
big
about
hubbub
it,
about
but
it.
we
Yeah.
can see.
Yeah, lot of I was going through Disney Plus the other day, and there is a lot of classic movies that you would love that you've never seen before, I guarantee it.
Really.
Oh, yeah. Like, I'm
Cuz
talking have you ever seen Swiss Family Robinson?
no, I haven't.
Oh, you would love Swiss Family Robinson.
I still just have a certain apprehension about really campy old movies where before they could do anything. So I'm not a huge fan of stuff like that, but because of this movie, I am more open to things like that.